Welcome back to the Crash Course Podcast. My name is Craig Crash Collins, joined as always by Brandon Scott, otherwise known as B. Scott. After weeks of drama and emotion, it's finally race week at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Today, we tie a bow on another historic year of qualifications. Then we turn our attention to the greatest spectacle in racing. We're going to be breaking down the entire field and giving our predictions for the 107th Indianapolis 500. Hope you enjoy it. We've got a jam-packed show for you guys today. It's going to be a lot of fun to really get into the weeds and dive in to this race because I think we're going to have a lot of fun watching this on Sunday. Now, quick, before we get going, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time, giving our opening banter before we get into things. But first, we want to wish Stefan Wilson a speedy recovery, as it was a scary practice crash just the other day, and so hopefully he gets better. And also, interesting things as they unfold. That's the emotion of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is encapsulated in Graham Rahal with his head in his hands on Sunday afternoon after failing to qualify. A crazy storyline that is. We'll get into that a little bit later on in the podcast. But then a few days later, as fate would have it, you have mixed feelings because you don't want to see, obviously, Stefan be moved out of the race because of this, but now Graham Rahal back into it. It just encapsulates the emotion that May brings to Indianapolis.
Yeah, it's so interesting what qualifying does at this speedway. We've seen numerous times big names. Typically, you think it's going to be the smaller names from the smaller teams that are going to be left on the outside looking in. But man, we have seen time and time again big names either getting completely bumped out or having to have to bump their way in. Whether it be Marco Andretti bumping his way in on his last attempt several years ago. I don't remember the exact year. I was there, but I don't remember the exact year. It was many years ago.
Will Power almost got bumped,
and it was the year Dan Weldon won his second Indy 500, or whether it was James Hinchcliffe, a year removed from winning the pole for the Indy 500, not making the show, or whether it was Fernando Alonso not making the show. The list just goes on. And for this year to be Graham Rahal, who has had some success here at Indy, was definitely kind of a shocker. But all the rumblings of Graham Rahal potentially leaving, or looking at potentially leaving Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan, and now he's getting an opportunity to step into Stephen Wilson's car. It's just it's amazing how everything kind of worked out. Honda allowing him, or Chevy, or vice versa. The car manufacturers allowing for this to happen because it's going from one to the other. That sometimes is frowned upon, but it's great also to see everybody come together like this and allow for this to happen in order to keep the 33 car race for the Indy 500 and still give everybody their opportunity that is physically able to.
Yeah, all that's been the big kind of undercurrent underneath all that is like all the talks of like Graham Rahal not being satisfied. So, we'll see how he does on Sunday, and we'll kind of go from there, and that'll be interesting to track as the rest of the season rolls on. But yeah, another year, another historic qualifications weekend. The lead up, looking at kind of the practices leading up to this past weekend. Wednesday's fastest was Takuma Sato. Scott Dixon, Santino Ferrucci were second and third. Thursday's fastest was the 2022 Indy 500 champion Marcus Ericsson. He was followed up by Scott Dixon and Simon Pagenaud. Then on Fast Friday, Takuma Sato was fastest again, followed by Marco Andretti and Rinus VeeKay. Then on qualification day, Saturday, Tony Kanaan was fastest in practice, followed by Alexander Rossi and Alex Palou, kind of foreshadowing some of the cars that would be fastest on pole day, or on the first day of qualifications. Felix Rosenquist sits P1 after day one with a 4-lap average of 233.047. Only Ari Leyendyke's record run in 1996 and Scott Dixon's pole run the last year were faster Alexander Rossi, Alex Palou, Rinus VeeKay, Scott Dixon, Tony Kanaan, Takuma Sato, Pato O'Ward, Santino Ferrucci, Marcus Ericsson, Benjamin Peterson, and Will Power made up the Fast 12. Catherine Legge, driving for Rahal Letterman Lanigan, turns the can't talk today. Turns in the single fastest lap and 4-lap average of any female driver in the history of the Indianapolis 500.
Wow, good for her.
Which was pretty incredible. Fastest lap was 2:31.627, average of 2:31.070. Last chance qualifiers were Christian Lundgaard, Jack Harvey, and Graham Rahal, all from Rahal Letterman Lanigan, as well as Stingray Robb. So that was kind of an extra layer, is that all 4 were series regulars. So it wasn't like oh well, you kind of, because it works out that way sometimes when you're like, okay, well, one of the 4 isn't really a series regular, so we're like, not like, that's the one you're kind of hoping. Not that you're hoping anyone doesn't, but someone's going to get bumped, and you're kind of like, well, hopefully one of the series regulars doesn't have to miss. So that kind of added an extra layer. Day 2, Fast 12 qualifying. Felix Rosenqvist is at the top again with a 4-lap average of 2:34.081. Santino Ferrucci held the top for a while with an impressive run for AJ Foyt. Rinus VeeKay, Alex Palou, Scott Dixon, and Pato O'Ward made up the Fast 6. Rossi bumped out by his teammate Rosenqvist's run. It was Sato, Kanaan, Ericsson, Peterson, and Power who rounded out the top 12. Then last chance qualifying. It was Christian Lundgaard qualifying the fastest, followed by Stingray Robb and Graham Rahal, because Jack Harvey just couldn't find the speed. That is until his final run at the gun bumps his teammate Graham Rahal out of the 500 30 years after his dad Bobby missed the race. It was you kind of wonder. I know, obviously, you re-enter the qualifying, you go back out again, you pull your time, but you almost wonder, retroactively, does Graham Rahal and his team kind of hope that they might have gone out because they knew they were faster anyway than Harvey? I know it's a big risk, but it might have paid off if they had gone out and to block Harvey from going. But then you've got the teammate angle, a lot of drama unfolding on bump day as that unfolded, and then it was time for the Fast 6. Alex Palou just goes out there and sets the fastest 4-lap average pole speed in Indy 500 history, surpassing his teammate Scott Dixon, who did the same a season prior. His 4-lap average was 2:34.217. He's the first Spaniard to sit on the pole. Rinus VeeKay and Felix Rosenqvist make up the front row, the closest front row in history, only separated by .103. It was also the fastest front row in Indy 500. Santino Ferrucci, Pato O'Ward, and Scott Dixon will make up row 2. So an incredible weekend of quals this past weekend at IMS. So looking for a standout performance, and we didn't really get into them a ton, in kind of the recap here. But, when I look at my standout performance, we talked about the favorites going in, and a big discussion last week was who's going to be the fastest rookie qualifier. And we talked about, like, hey, there's really not a standout. The fastest rookie qualifier might be what, like 20th, 19th. None of the rookies have really stood out in quals all year. But then comes Benjamin Peterson. The Indy 500 was Benjamin Peterson, was last in the open test in April. He had just one qualifying effort in this season where he qualified in the top 20. He started 13th at Texas, so maybe that should have shown us, like, hey, on the ovals he can do a little bit better. He was 21st in practice on Wednesday, 26th on Thursday, 15th on Fast Friday. So his qualifying approach, he did have signs of having the speed to compete for the Fast 12. But man, not only does he make the Fast 12 and complete the best qualifying weekend of his IndyCar career, but he was putting up speeds at practice at 2:35, and I think that was no toe that he was getting 2:35. I mean, he was absolutely flying around in the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And when you look at the first 4 rows, I mean, there aren't too many surprises, but I don't know that many had Benjamin Peterson having the weekend that he did. So what a way. You come to Indy for the first time and you blow kind of not only the other rookies out of the water, but you're up there competing with some big names. I mean, he out-qualifies, Will Power, all the Penske drivers. I mean, he was doing really well out there in qualifying, holding his own with some of the big guns. So Benjamin Peterson is my standout from this last weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great pick. Benjamin Peterson had a great run. But for me, I'm looking at Felix Rosenqvist. I think just from practice all the way through qualifying, he's been the fastest of the Arrow McLaren or McLaren Arrow McLaren cars, and it's you know, when we look at this team, you go, oh yeah, it's Pato Award and Alexander Rossi that should be leading the way. But Felix Rosenquist just has had a phenomenal run with practices, like I said, and qualifying third, sitting on the front row. I mean, he set himself up for some pretty good success, and it's really, I feel like his speed this month has been kind of overshadowed by some of the other names on the list, and also by the fact that drivers like Benjamin Peterson and Santino Ferrucci have been kind of the talk of the paddock. If you look at it, like he's just kind of sitting there having a quietly good month on the oval. So he's my biggest my biggest performer in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he's a driver that, it was kind of weird because does he pulls that fast lap on P1. He was fastest through the first two, like through quals day one, and then through the fast 12 he was the fastest. But you almost, because you had guys like Scott Dixon and guys like Alex Pilot in the field as well. You in the Fast Six, you wondered, like, is that going to hold up? And I mean, yeah, it didn't end up holding up, but he still puts it on the front row. He always qualifies so well on ovals. So yeah, he put forward a fantastic week. And so I wanted to look at some surprises too, because there was just like a lot of great performances. I'm gonna keep the love on AJ Foyt though. You brought him up as Santino Ferrucci. We talked about Peterson and his run earlier, but also what a weekend for Santino Ferrucci. Like I said, I'm glad you brought him up. He was 25th at the Open Test earlier this year, but it's been fast all May. Third in practice on Wednesday, seventh on Friday. He held P1 through the Fast 12. He winds up fourth on the grid for Sunday. He hadn't started higher than 15th for the greatest spectacle in racing. The Foyt drivers, like I said, they hung with Chip Ganassi, McLaren. They both drivers qualified higher than Team Penske, so I'm not sure how many people saw that coming into quals weekend. So we had a lot of outstanding performances, but AJ Foyt Enterprises really opened some eyes.
So I'm kind of looking in a different direction in general. I'm looking at Penske, and some of this can be explained. It's just but you have Joseph Newgarden, who's put up some really fast times, fast laps throughout, from the open test through the month, and for especially him to not make the fast 12 even, and for that team in general just to kind of, I don't know, feel
They
like
were on
that
the
not
fringe. I mean,
not
I don't think that Will Power was even. I mean, he was obviously in the Fast 12 and competitive, but I don't think anyone saw him as a real contender to win the
no.
pole.
But like I said, it can be kind of explained. Like you and I were talking before we started, and I said, look, I think it's kind of like you even said this. Penske kind of looks at it and goes, we can win this race from starting in that early teen range. We're okay there. Um, and like I said then was, look, after qualifying, you have all this time building up to qualifying, and after qualifying, you have a practice session on Monday, the day after, and then you have a 1 hour session on carb day to get your car right for race day. Why not spend more time? Like, okay, let's spend the early part figuring out what we can do to get some good speed out of this car for qualifying. All right, good. We're happy where that's at. Now let's take the rest of the time and focus on getting our car good for race day. And that's typically what we've seen out of this team. So I guess it's not super surprising, but at the same time, when you looked at some of the averages that like Joseph Newgarden was putting up in, like I said, the open test and then early part of the Indy 500 practice, it is kind of surprising that he fell that far. So I mean that one, I mean there's several you could look at from that standpoint. I mean, I'll get the next one. I'll go deeper on the next question for this next pick of mine.
Yeah, because I also wanted to look at who kind of stood out from practice to qualifying. Like, who did we not see coming at all going into the 2 days of qualifying this past weekend. Looking at the practice results and what our expectations were for qualifying this weekend, there wasn't really anything to me that like stood out like glaring, because I also looked at the practice results, and you could tell like there were drivers doing like different things because obviously the speeds, it wasn't until like Friday that you started to see speeds as teams started to get ready for this past weekend. You didn't really see speeds close to what we saw on Saturday or Sunday until Friday, so it was kind of a mixed bag. But
Well, they also
um,
do get that additional boost on Fast Friday, so that has
right.
a little bit to do with it too.
True. But looking at, so I wanted to though give a quick shout out to Callum Ilott and his crew. He was 32nd at the Open Test back in April. He basically told his crew how he wasn't comfortable with how things felt with the car, so they called for a complete chassis swap, which his crew is able to pull off in 24 hours.
That's risky.
Right, really risky, and it puts you in danger. Like, yeah, you're gonna miss day one, but what that means is, hey, there's a chance that your first run, your first and only qualifying runs, will be to help you stay in the field. And I mean, we saw Jack Harvey. He only got. It wasn't like he got, 4 or 5 runs at trying to, it was his third and final run where they finally got it together and made the race. So I mean, and it could have been a big issue if like Cal Ilott was in that same position, but instead his crew puts in the great work that they did. It was awesome too. I mean, he sent out a tweet where he was like, "We basically pulled off in less than a day what other teams have been practicing all week to do," and it was pretty cool and pretty impressive to see what they were able to do. And not only does he avoid last chance qualifying, but he puts the car comfortably in the show. Like, yeah, I think he's like 28th, but like still, he wasn't really close to being in that last chance qualifying group there. So really great job by Callum Ilott and his crew.
Yeah. So again, I'm going in the opposite direction. Kind of biggest surprise, kind of from practice to qualifying. I'm going Connor Daly. You know, yes, history shows Connor Daly hasn't always qualified the best at the Motor Speedway, but the lap times he was putting up in practice and consistently being one of the fastest cars day in and day out, it was surprising to see him not in the Fast 12. And if you listen to interviews with him, he was surprised too, because in the past, like last year, he had balance issues. And it was just like, I couldn't get the car balanced. The wind was shifting us all over the place. I just couldn't get a good handle on it. And, there's been some things that have popped up, but he got out of the car and said, look, the car was comfortable and the car was fast. It's just, I don't know why it wasn't fast enough. I can't tell you. Um, so it was a little surprising to see, because I thought, yeah, this is his opportunity to get a top 9 start, a top 12 start, which would have been put him up there for his best career start. However, we do know Connor Daly does run well come Indy 500 Sunday, so not too concerning. He qualified right around his on the higher end of his average, so it's still all good, but it was kind of surprising to see him not put up those times like we saw in practices leading up to qualifying.
Yeah, and so we'll see what. I mean, he was second at the Open Test too, so it'll be interesting to see what he can do come Sunday. And speaking of Sunday, it's now time to shift our attention towards the greatest spectacle in racing. We've qualified, we've run the GMR Grand Prix. It's finally time for the big show. And so going in at the beginning of the month, we talked about who was having the great, who's got the most momentum going into the month of May as a whole. Now I kind of want to look at who has the most momentum, who's put together the best month so far going into the Indianapolis 500, who kind of walks in as one of the favorites, if not the favorite. And for me, I mean, first things first, when we got to preview this thing, how can you not look at Alex Palou and the absolute
Oh
month
yeah.
he is having? I mean, I think with the win, completing the Indy sweep, he'll have wrapped up the greatest month in the history of the Indianapolis 500. I mean, he won the GMR Grand Prix starting second. He not only will start P1 on Sunday, but broke his teammate's record for the fastest 4-lap average in race history. Only 2 other drivers have done the Indy sweep. Will Power in 2018. He didn't start on the pole. Simon Pagenaud won in 2019, won the pole that year as well, but his speed would not have made this year's race, which is
Jeez.
pretty incredible to look at. I don't think, and I honestly don't think it's going to be topped unless we want to start talking about P1 and winning both races. Like I'm sure if someone comes across, starts P1 for both races, wins both races, and in the process sets like a qualifying record, then that driver can be talked about ahead of Alex Palou. But right now, I think Alex Palou is is on the precipice of completing the greatest month that we've seen in May ever, which is pretty awesome to think about. He was fourth, also just to kind of add on, he was fourth in practice on Wednesday, ninth on Thursday, third on Sunday, second on Sunday, and fourth on this past Monday. So he's been fast. You know, he's been at the top of the charts in all aspects this month, and I think he's got a great chance at the Indy sweep. So I mean, he for me is the honest favorite going into Sunday.
Yeah, it's hard to look at anybody else that's had as good of a month as him. I mean, I don't want to just like say it's him, but even though clearly it is Alex Palou. But another driver that's having a pretty good month, I would say as well, is Alexander Rossi. Look, we came into this month saying that this was his opportunity to kind of right the ship and get his feet back underneath him with a new team and everything. He performed well at the GMR Grand Prix. He's now qualified in the top six. I mean, he's good to go in my mind. He's good qualifying spot, good finish at the GMR Grand Prix. He's just kind of been solid. So I think based off of long-term goals and the goals that we looked at for teams coming into the month of May, he has definitely met the goals up to this point. So, I mean, it doesn't compare to Alex Palou's month, but any stretch of the imagination. But for considering the struggles we've seen from him this year, and in years past, these performances go a long way for Alexander Rossi.
Oh yeah, I mean he gets his first podium of the year at the GMR Grand Prix. I mean, you know, my goal for Arrow McLaren was get Felix Rosenquist and Alexander Rossi both, like, if not in the top 10, around the top 10, and they're already, as far as the points go, and they're already well on their way to doing that if they can convert their success from all the pre-race and lead up into actually success in the 500. So I think they're in a good spot to come out of May way better than they were going into May. So that is a good pick. And one thing we did last year that I really liked and I think is really fun to do, and I wanted to bring it in this year as one of our previews for the 500. I wanted to do a full grid preview. So that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to do our full grid preview. We're going to pick a driver from each row that has the best shot at winning the Indy 500. It's kind of our hot or cold, but Indy 500 edition where we're going to go through, kind of rank each driver hot through cold and give who we think is going to be the best. Now, I will say before we get into this, the outline for this podcast was made prior to Stephen Wilson's crash and Graham Rahal filling in for him. I know he will be moved to the back of the field, which obviously jumbles up the last couple of rows, but we didn't really feel like it was that big of a deal to actually go in and change everything and redo.
Because ultimately, it really only affects 3 drivers total, or 4. You know, there's no Stephen Wilson. Graham Rahal's now in row 11, and there's 2 drivers that get bumped up a row. So ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, trying to shift all that around, it just, yeah.
Right. So
for the sake of this exercise, but yes, we are aware Stephen Wilson is not in the race. Graham Rahal is starting 33rd, and everybody gets bumped up a spot that was behind Stephen Wilson.
Right. So we've
there we go.
We've addressed that. All you YouTube comment Andy's in the chat or in the comment section. We know, we're aware. Please do not come for us for it technically being a little helter skelter from what it'll be on Sunday. Because also, like I said before we started recording, I also think like I'm not sure if they'll still line him up in his normal spot, and then as they get going, because I know in NASCAR sometimes when they have to make a driver change, they will, or a car like they swap to the backup car or have an engine change, they'll still line them up where they qualified on the grid, and then they will move back in the warm-up laps. So
yeah, so according to IndyStar, they are bumping everybody up for starting positions.
Right.
So I mean that's going to kind of change how I pick, especially my last row, because it does affect. I'll just go ahead and tell you right now. So Christian Lundgaard will get bumped up to row 10 Callum Islet will get bumped up to row 9. So now in 25th is Devlin DiFrancesco. 26th, Augustine Canapino. 27th, Callum Islet. 28th, RC Enerson. 29th, Catherine Legg. 30th, Christian Lundgaard. 31, Stingray Robb. 32, Jack Harvey. 33, Graham Rahal.
Okay, so yeah, that's how it's going to be in those last couple of rows there. So let's go ahead and kick things off. I'm gonna go off of what it was originally. But if obviously if you want to go ahead and change it, it's only the last little bit of it that's going to be changed anyway. So originally row 11 was inside was Christian Lundgaard, middle was Stingray Robb, Jack Harvey was on the outside of row 33. As far as how I would rank them hot to cold, I would go Lundgaard, Robb, and Harvey. This is more about not having a ton of faith in Stingray Robb or Jack Harvey, but I also think overall Lundgaard has been the strongest of the three, especially if, with the momentum that he has coming from from being second and finishing fourth at the GMR Grand Prix. I know obviously those are two entirely different races, but that still kind of gives you a little bit of a comfort value racing at Indy. And I also think, man, Christian Lundgaard, for being in the last row shootout, was super calm and collected. So I think he's going to have kind of the right vibe to go in and have success at the 500.
So my row 11, I'm actually going to go with Graham Rahal now. Look, he's stepping into a car that qualified 25th. Yeah, it's going to be a totally different car now. But Graham Rahal has had some success at Indianapolis. He just wasn't finding it this year with Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan. So I think putting him in a different car, it's kind of going to be his prove it opportunity, with the talk or rumors of him potentially looking to move on from Rahal. So it could be a good opportunity for him. So I think he takes the most of that opportunity, and of those three in row 11, I like Graham Rahal the best.
Inside of row 10, it's Callum Islet, RC Enerson, Catherine Legg. Hot to cold. If I were to rank these guys, these drivers, can't say guys, because you got Catherine Legg in there, and that's who I have as the best of the three. Legg, Islet, and Enerson is how I'd rank them. Catherine Legg has run twice at the Indianapolis 500. Her best finish was 22nd, but that was back in 2012 and 2013. To get in the car for the first time in 10 years and not only qualify better than 4 series regulars, including her 3 teammates, but to put together the fastest lap and 4-lap average of any female driver in the history of the race is pretty darn impressive. That's better than Danica. That's better than Sarah Fisher. That's pretty incredible what she was able to do. I'll rank Islet over Enerson just because of the fact that Enerson is a rookie, although Islet in his only run has finished 32nd. But Catherine Legg, what a week, or what a month she's had so far.
All right, before I get into this, I'm looking at the starting grid, the printout from the Indy Star, and they have the drivers' pictures next to their cars. And holy cow, Callum Islet and Christian Lundgaard could be twins. Like, if it wasn't for a little tiny mustache on Christian Lundgaard, you would think they just photoshopped a different suit over.
They're like, we don't have an extra picture, so just
like,
put a mustache
that's
on.
Gotta be. I'm like, yeah. All right. So with this one, my order is I'm going with Christian Lundgaard as my hot. Then I'm going RC Enerson and then Catherine Legg. Look, I would have gone Catherine Legg a little bit higher, but having to go to a backup car and the different changes, that gives me a little bit of worry. But Christian Lundgaard, like you said, he looked calm, cool, collected in his run. We were talking about potential dark horses last week. He was one of the guys that I talked about. So I'm going to rank him as my hottest driver from row 10.
Final problem row, inside of row 9 was originally going to be Stefan Wilson. He gets replaced by Graham Rahal. Devlin DiFrancesco is in the middle, and Augustin Canapino, the rookie, is on the outside. I was going to give Wilson a lot of love here. He was going to be my hottest. Wilson has run in 4 Indy 500s, finishing as high as 15th in 2018. Other runs weren't great, but When the other drivers in your row have one start between them, Wilson was the easy choice there. That means Graham Rahal is the easiest choice to make out of those three drivers. You talked about it earlier. I mean, heck, he was a tire falling off his car a couple of years ago from potentially winning the whole darn thing. Now, I,
Mhm.
I, I'm going to talk about some storylines that are cool later when we get into our predictions. I think a cool storyline would be, after all the rumblings of his unhappiness with Rahal Letterman Lanigan and all that kind of things, if he were to go out, I mean, I don't think he is going to win the whole darn thing, but imagine if he wins the Indianapolis 500 filling in a different car. Because you kind of wonder, like, okay, if he were to leave Rahal, like, it's kind of like when we talk
There's not a whole lot of options
right,
out
when we
there.
talk, it's like when we talk about like coaching changes and stuff like that. I mean, heck, we just talked about it with the Colts this past year. Like, yeah, Reich was struggling, but who are you going to get that's better at the moment? When we were talking about what moves you can make, and that's kind of the thing with Ray Hall. Like, yeah, Ray. I mean, I would love to see Ray Hall have some success and contend for a championship, but I mean, you know, I don't unless you're. I mean, what are you? Where are you going that kind of guarantees you like a shot at that, and who's taking the flyer on Ray Hall to fill their position as opposed to some other younger driver that they're bringing in. I'd be interested to see. I don't really know Alex Pilot's situation. What's gonna be beyond past 2023 with what team he's gonna be on. It'd be interesting to see once those dominoes fall, what other seats open up. But you talked about it being a kind of an audition run for Ray Hall, and I think this is going to be a really fun race to watch him run to see what he can do. To kind of show like, hey, look, it ain't me, guys. It's the equipment I'm being provided.
Right. So for me, my hot, like in the kind of jumbled up row nine, I'm going with Devlin DeFrancesco, then Callum Ilott, followed by Augustine Canapino. Um, I just feel like DeFrancesco is kind of one of those drivers that surprises people occasionally, especially at Indy. I remember last year he kind of had it kind of opened up a few eyes. So I think he can kind of carry that, hopefully. But it's a tough row to pick one from. So I'm going with Devlin, then Callum, then Augustin.
And then once you get to row 8, that's actually when you start having a little bit of trouble deciding what you want to do, at least for
Yeah.
me. Row 8, inside of row 8 is Simon Pagino. Middle of row 8 is David Malukas, rounded out by Marco Andretti on the outside. My order, I went with Pagano, Andretti, then Malukas as far as ranking those drivers. I mean, this, though, like I said, is the first row I had trouble deciding with, and, yeah, it can't happen as far back as row 8. Between the three, Marco was fastest in practice 3. Pagano was fastest on Thursday, third overall. Marco was fastest on Fast Friday, second overall. I really wanted to go as with Malukas as my favorite from this row, especially since honestly he should have won Rookie of the Year last year instead of Jimmy Johnson. But Pagano won the 500 just 4 years ago. He qualified fastest of the three, was third fastest in practice on Thursday, and finished eighth with Meyer Shank Racing last season. Marco hasn't finished with the greatest. Marco hasn't finished in the top 10 at the greatest spectacle in racing since 2017. Lucas hasn't been faster than the other two this month at all, but I think he could still have a good run. So yeah, my order from that row is Pagano, Andretti, and then Malukas.
Gosh, this one's hard. I'm gonna go Andretti, Pagano, and then Malukas. But man, Pagano and Andretti are just so interchangeable there. I feel actually, you know what? I'm switching it. Pagano, Andretti, Malukas. Look, ever since Andretti has kind of gone, he's only doing the one race a year thing with, running the Indy 500. Um, Last year he just didn't perform very well. It was just kind of like he was uncomfortable behind the wheel of the car. So because of that, I'm leaning more towards Pagano to be the hottest of this row, past winner, with a team that has won it in the past. So I feel like if there's a chance for somebody to make some noise from this row, it is definitely Simon Pagano.
Row 7 on the inside, you've got Romain Grosjean. Middle, you've got Elio Castroneves. And on the outside, you've got Colton Herta. My ranking was Castroneves was the hottest driver of the three, followed by Herta and Grosjean. I mean, you can't argue with the four-time champ, including a win just a couple of years ago with his current team, Meyer Shank. You finished seventh last year with Meyer Shank, despite starting 27th, so he's done it from deep in the field with this equipment before. He's done it with different teams. He's done it from different rows on the grid. Once it's race day, Spider-Man just has another gear. And I think he's just able to find that each and every year at this race. Herta is capable of a strong run, but has been super inconsistent at the 500. He's only finished higher than, he's only finished higher than he's qualified. 3 of the 4 500s he's run. He started 10th and finished 8th in 2020. He has 2 finishes of 30th or worse. Herta has been faster than Grosjean all month, save for qualifying. And as much hype as I was giving Grosjean, we look at his, his only 500 was last year, and he crashed early, so it's kind of too tough to really tell what he's going to be able to do at the greatest spectacle in racing.
So row 7, give me Elio Castroneves, Roman Grosjean, then Colton Herta. I mean, there's not much more you need to say about Elio Castroneves. I mean, his team's rocking shirts that say "Drive for 5." I mean, it's got a great ring to it. But I'm putting Roman Grosjean ahead of Colton Herta because Grosjean this year has put together a pretty solid year, a consistent year, and I could see that consistency carrying over to this weekend. Whereas Colton Herta, I mean, it's been up and down, and his track record during the 500 isn't great. And I just feel like Roman Grosjean is adapting better. He's adapted quickly to this car, and I think you're going to see him have a good race come Sunday. Whereas Colton Herta, I don't know. It's hard to tell what Colton Herta you're going to get week in and week out.
Very true. Inside of row 6, you've got Connor Daly. He is surrounded by Joseph Newgarden in the middle and Ryan Hunter-Reay on the outside. And I actually surprised myself with the way I went here. I went, as far as my order, Hunter-Reay, Joseph Newgarden, then Connor Daly. Although this is another hard road to gauge, between the three, Hunter-Reay was fastest on Wednesday. He was 8th fastest, though Newgarden was right behind him in 9th. Connor Daly was fastest, 6th overall on Thursday, and then Newgarden was fastest on Friday, 6th overall. But Hunter-Reay has won this thing before, and even though he didn't run last year's race, he's still got more top 10s in the last 5 years than the other two. As far as what he's done on actual race day, Newgarden has been has the better equipment and statistically has been better than Daly on race day. As far as like the last few years, he's had more top 5s and things along those lines. So I'm going with Newgarden. It's another kind of toss up row, but give me Hunter-Reay just because of his experience and success on race day.
So for row number 6, I'm going Connor Daly, Ryan Hunter-Reay, then Joseph Newgarden. Look, Connor Daly showed us last year that it doesn't matter where he qualifies, he's going to be up at the front contending. I mean, he led a ton of laps, and if it wasn't for just a bad break last year, I mean, we probably could have been talking about him as the winner of the Indy 500. And then I'm going Ryan Hunter-Reay ahead of Joseph Newgarden because I feel like every year I look at Joseph Newgarden as a potential contender and winner of this race. And every year I get proven wrong. And it's like, you know what? You keep fooling me. And, I've been fooled so many times. It's totally shame on me. So now I'm not going to let it slip by me this time. I agree with you, Ryan Hunter-Reay. He's got the experience. He's been able to focus just on this race. I mean, it bodes well for him. But I mean, Joseph Newgarden does have better equipment, hands down. But I don't know. This has just been a struggle for him. He can be up there contending, and all of a sudden, boom, like bad pitch strategy or something. It's just hard to put your finger on what it is. So I'm going with him as the coldest of this row.
Looking at row 5 on the inside, it's Ed Carpenter, followed by Scott McLaughlin in the middle, and then on the outside, it's Kyle Kirkwood. And I'm going with my order. I'm going Kirkwood, Carpenter, and then McLaughlin. With the exception of the first practice session, Kirkwood has been faster than the other two in practice. He was fourth fastest on Saturday, which is higher than the other two on the speed charts. Carpenter's probably the play here. When I was writing it down, I was like, it's hard to bet against Carpenter. He has had strong runs at the 500 over the last 5 years, 3 finishes of 6 or higher, but I like how fast he's been so far this month. Talking about Kirkwood, he's been really good. And he's been able to finish at the middle of the pack. Sorry, I'm getting a little confused with what I wrote here. But I like how fast he's been so far this month, that he was able to finish at the middle of the pack with equipment that is arguably worse than what he has this year with Andretti Autosport. So Kirkwood, with not as good equipment last year, was still able to finish middle of the pack. I think that's what I was trying to say there. I don't know what jumbled mess that was. But he finished middle of the pack last year with worse equipment. He's got better equipment with Andretti Autosport this year, so I think he can have success. McLaughlin hasn't finished higher than 20th in his 2 Indy 500, so I know there's some people in our comment section that like Scott McLaughlin and think we don't give him enough love, but he just hasn't proven it on race day. So I like Kyle Kirkwood to be kind of a dark horse from this row.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we just had another Craig. Let me check my notes
Yeah,
moment
yeah, we did.
there. And it always comes when we're talking about racing. So, hey, keeping the tradition alive. But as far as row number 5 goes for me, give me Scott McLaughlin as my hottest driver, Kyle Kirkwood coming in a close second, and then Ed Carpenter to round out row 5. Look, I think the success and that Scott McLaughlin has seen at Texas can help him be better prepared for this race. I feel more confident in him coming into this year than even last year or the year before. So I think he's gonna that success is gonna come through. Um, Kyle Kirkwood, like you said, he's been fast all month. He's proven that he can be running up there on lesser equipment. He's got good equipment now, so expect big things out of him. Ed Carpenter, it's so tough to say with him just because it's the one race he runs. I don't know. Last year, it seemed like a struggle for him when everybody else on his team was doing well. I'm just not as confident in him. That's why I put him third on that row.
Now we're into the top 12 here. Inside of row 4, Marcus Ericsson, followed by Benjamin Peterson, then Will Power. My order, as far as who I think is the hottest driver from this row, I'm going Ericsson, then Power, then Peterson. Ericsson was fastest in practice 4 on Thursday, 7th on Wednesday, 4th on Fast Friday. He's been faster than the other two in practice and qualifying. He was the points leader heading into May, last year's Indy 500 champion. I like Ericsson of these three, although we haven't seen a repeat winner of the greatest spectacle in racing in over 20 years, so that is something to keep in mind. Power won in 2018. He finished 5th in 2019, but since then he hasn't been higher than 14th. Peterson, though really fast in qualifying, has the misfortune of being in the same row as Power and Ericsson. That's why I don't like him as much, although, I mean, look, that's something itself of his chances that he's even in that conversation with Ericsson and Power. So Peterson's last for me, but again, once you get up to this level, I mean,
It's tough.
It's tough, and honestly, you can make the argument for any of these guys in any of these rows coming up.
Yeah, so I'm the exact same order. Marcus Ericsson, Will Power, Benjamin Peterson. Really, Marcus Ericsson and Will Power can easily flip flop, but Marcus Ericsson gets the nod because of being the reigning Indy 500 champ, and Will Power does not because of his recent struggles during the 500. So it's like you said, it's a tough row, but I got to go with the reigning champ as the hottest driver in the row, and then kind of the surprise rookie as the coldest.
Row 3, top 9
Gosh,
here.
this row.
Yeah, this is.
I mean,
You've got
just throw it at a wall, and you're like, yep, that works.
3 former winners in this row at the Indianapolis 500. Pretty crazy. On the inside, you've got Alexander Rossi, followed by Takuma Sato in the middle. Outside row 3 is Tony Kanaan. McLaren's was fast this weekend. And so obviously, two of those drivers are there with Kanaan and Rossi. I still like the idea of Takuma Sato and all the success he's had, and then all that predating the fact that he has better equipment this year than he's ever had. That's going to be really exciting. Since 2016, which was the first race that featured all three of these drivers, Rossi has a win, 2 podiums, 4 top 5s, and 5 top 10s. Sato, 2 wins, 3 podiums. Kanaan, a podium, 3 top 5s, and 5 top 10s. Rossi's been the most consistent of the three on race day, and McLaren's been super fast, as I've said, so I think my order is going to be Rossi, Sato, then Kanaan. I hate it. Kanaan's been more consistent than Sato. Kanaan's been my favorite driver, excited for the chance to see his final race at the Indianapolis 500, but I still have a hunch about Takuma Sato with Chip Ganassi power behind him. But also there's no wrong answer here. I mean, like you said,
Exactly.
throw it at a wall, and that's just as much of an order as anything else.
Yeah. So I'm going to go Kanaan, Rossi, then Sato. I think the experience, I mean, Rossi and Kanaan, I feel like could be interchangeable a little bit. But Kanaan always recently he's come in, he stepped in just for this race, and then comes out and has a great run. I could see Kanaan doing that this year. I mean, he's been again. I'm going to use this phrase: quietly been good. I mean, a fan favorite. I don't know how you can be quietly good, but he has. It's just he's just been there. He's been consistent every day. Um, I don't know. Also, knowing it's his last Indy 500, you kind of want to pull for him a little bit more. Rossi, like I said earlier, Rossi's he's found his legs again, and things are looking good. Yes, Sato does have the best equipment he's probably ever had coming into the Indy 500. However, Sato can sometimes get in his own way as a driver. And what scares me about this row is that you got Alexander Rossi and Tony Kanaan on either side of him. Sato is such a wild card that something could happen at the beginning of the race where I don't know, where he could potentially take out both Rossi and Kanaan and come out of it completely clean, but there goes 2 contenders right off the bat. It's just one of those like, because you hear the phrase, man, I got Satoed. That driver got Satoed. And it, I don't know. So I'm picking him as the coldest driver in this row just because sometimes he drives it a little too hard.
Yeah, I mean that's I agree. I remember being at the USGP, and that's when he was in Formula One, and he was like drove with so much attrition, and that's carried him throughout his entire career. So definitely, the being Satoed is very real. So yeah, kind of a wild card in that respect. Row 2 on the inside, you have Santino Ferrucci. In the middle, Pato Award, and then on the outside, Scott Dixon. My order for this row, as far as hot to cold, I'm going Award, then Dixon, then Ferrucci. In 2020, that was Pato's first Indy 500. He finished 6th and won Rookie of the Year. He finished 4th in 2021, was runner-up last year. So in other words, if you notice the trend there, Award has improved his finishing position at the 500 every year that he's running the greatest spectacle in racing. And after finishing 2nd, there's really only one more spot to go if you're going to keep that trend up. Also was fired up after coming up short last year. I mean, obviously, like, who wouldn't be when you finish 2nd, but still, that'll serve as motivation. Dixon has been snake-bitten more often than not at the 500 as of late. Ferrucci has finished in the top 10 every year he's been at Indy, but still feels weird to go with have Dixon last from this row, not picking the Iceman there. So not ready to do that quite yet, but I think Award is the class of these three.
So yeah, I got Award as the hottest driver from this row as well. Like you said, finishing runner up last year just kind of left a bad taste in his mouth. He had a really good car last year. He's got a really good car again this year. So give me a Pato Award there to lead things off. However, I am going with Santino Ferrucci right there in the middle because, like you said, he's just been consistent. Top 10 finishes in every 500 for him. And this is going to be his best starting position. Just everything's kind of aligning for Ferrucci to have a really good race day. Then I'm going with Scott Dixon, mostly because, like you said, he has been snake bitten in this, whether it's been a pit road issue or a wreck or fuel mileage not working out, which is really strange for a Scott Dixon race. Um, it's just when you look at the other two drivers and you look at history, history doesn't look so kindly upon Scott Dixon at this track. But like we've always said with Scott Dixon, it's not just about one race, it's about the end game.
Yep, for sure. Row one, the fastest front row in history. On the inside, it's Alex Palou. Middle, it's Rinus VK. Outside, Felix Rosenquist. And so my hot to cold here is Palou, then Rosenquist, then VK. I mean, we talked about Palou earlier. He's got all the momentum in two Indy 500s with Ganassi. He's finished second and ninth. Neither VK nor Rosenquist have been able to convert their qualifying efforts into 500 success. VK has never started worse than fourth, but has finished inside the top 20 just once in his three races. He was eighth in 2021, and Rosenquist started eighth last year, finished fourth. That and the fact that McLaren Power has been so good this year is why I'm going with him. However, his best finish before that was 12th with a pair of finishes outside the top 25. So neither VK nor Rosenquist have had race day success. They've just qualified really well and then not been able to convert that into success when it mattered most.
Yes, I'm going with the exact same order, same reasons. I mean, Alex Palou, unbelievable month. Felix Rosenquist, like I said earlier, has had a quiet, good run up to the 500. Rinus VK, I just feel like he knows how to qualify that car really well, but just doesn't know how to put it together come race day, and is more likely to be wreckers than checkers um, this this Sunday. So give me Palou, Rosenquist, then VK.
There you have it. That's our full field breakdown of the starting grid. Pretty impressive field, really close this year. There's a lot of good picks out there, so it's gonna be anyone's race. And as we move on here, we're finally gonna get into our Indianapolis 500 race predictions. First, we're gonna start out with a little over under. We're gonna mix things up. We're not gonna leave any stone unturned when it comes to race day predictions. So I wanted to start with a little over under cautions 5.5. In 2022, there were 6 cautions, 2 in 2021, and then in 2020, there were 7, just to give you a brief little history of the last few years. I'm going under here. There hasn't been more than 5 cautions in a race all season. The most was 5 at Texas, the lone other oval on the schedule so far. The last time there was more than 5 yellows was back last August at Nashville, which is, I mean, that's being a street course race. That's pretty insane. Shows the attrition that you see at Nashville, where the yellow flag flew 8 times. So I'm gonna say it's probably gonna be like, if it's gonna be under, it's probably gonna be exactly 5. But that's where I've got it there. I think it's gonna be under. I think it's gonna be a relatively clean race. But you could go the other direction too, just because of how close the field is and how much drivers are gonna push once it gets to be 20 laps to go.
You just took the words right out of my mouth. I'm going with the over just because of how close this field is and how tight the racing is going to be. Yeah, Texas only saw the most with 5 this year, but Texas, the speeds there are just consistently high all the way throughout. Cars get a little bit more spread out, but cars tend to get loose a lot easier. Um, this race, there's going to be a lot of heavy racing, man. This is going to be a heck of a race. And if it's an under, if I'll say this, if it's the under of the cautions, this could go down as probably one of the shortest time wise Indy 500s with just how fast the entire field is. So I think from a fan perspective, um, the cautions do help. They make things really interesting. Um, so I'm going with the over just from a fan perspective in the area of keeping things interesting. Because if it gets too spread out with no cautions, then things get so stretched, and it's just kind of like then you see an instance like when Scott Dixon won his first, he kind of just ran away with it, and you're just like, okay,
Yeah.
very anticlimactic. So higher cautions bode for better racing, and better racing breeds more cautions. So I'm giving me the over.
Looking at lead changes, I've got the over under 29.5. There were 38 last year, 35 2 years ago, and then 21 in 2020. I'm going to go with the over, which maybe kind of contradicts how many cautions I think there are going to be because of the fact there's going to be so much passing. The field's super close. I know Pelot is at a dominant month, which, I mean, that's all another cog in this, is that like there is a chance that he could just kind of get ahead early and not really relinquish the lead and do kind of what he did at the GMR Grand Prix. But there are a lot of drivers I could see winning on Sunday. It is a really close field. Over the past 5 years, aside for 2020, the amount of lead changes has been right around 30 or over. So I think it's going to be another like high intensity, a lot of lead change type of race.
Yeah, give me the over for sure on this one. This one's easy money because look, yeah, time like speed wise, time wise, this is really a really close field, but that has nothing to do with it in the end for the lead changes. What's going to be a factor here is fuel mileage. With these cars, yeah, it's great being out front. It's great. You like being out front. However, it wreaks havoc on your fuel mileage. You cannot stretch your your runs very long when you're out front because you're not getting the drag or getting the pull from the car in front of you. It's all, I mean, it just doesn't work out. So that's why we see so many lead changes because these guys are more apt to give up the lead over and over again just to be able to stretch their fuel mileage. That's why you see it like somebody gets out to such a commanding lead and all of a sudden they fall back and it's like, oh, then they get past. It's like, whoa, what happened to their car? Nothing happened to their car. They just were told, hey, you are way too far ahead. You're burning too much fuel. Fall back, get behind, and save some of that fuel. Let the other guy go out there and burn his fuel mileage. So give me the over. It's easy. I'm thinking we're going to see closer to what we saw last year, if not even higher than that, just because of how important fuel is.
Yeah, I remember there was a couple of years that it was like Franchitti and Dixon where they were like, "Hey, we're just
They
going to
just
try."
traded back and
Yeah,
forth.
right, because they're like, "Hey, we need to both stretch the mileage there." All right, going into our rookie of the year, dark horse, and actual race, who we think is going to win. So my rookie of the year. Give me Benjamin Peterson. We went into qualifying weekend looking for a rookie to catch our eye, and it's no surprise. So it's no surprise that this year's crop of rookies has been underwhelming so far. Sorry, a little rude to the rookies, but it's true. They haven't really
Oh,
stood
it
out.
is.
Benjamin
Well, it's also
Peterson.
hard. It's hard to overlook like when some rookie classes in the past have had Roman Grosjean, Jimmy Johnson. It's like,
Yeah,
and then now all of a sudden it's like Benjamin Peterson, Stingray Robb, and it's like, oh, Stingray Robb. I don't know anything about Stingray Robb, but
right.
what a cool name.
Right, exactly. And yeah, and not only did Benjamin Peterson, emerge as, the favorite from this crop of rookies, but he knocked down the freaking door. He starts 11th. He was fast all qualifying weekend. We talked about his glow up earlier in the episode. He was 8th in practice again on Monday, and I think he's got the tools to have a really strong race and have a really good rookie campaign.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much all he has to do is just run consistent, run solid, and he will be the highest finishing rookie and run away with the Indy 500 Rookie of the Year trophy. So that's an easy one, just because of where he qualified and compared to where all the other rookies qualified. It's like just keep it clean.
Yeah.
Don't try to push it too much. Don't risk it, and you'll come home with a great finish and an awesome opportunity for your team.
Now, in years past, I've reserved my dark horse or my race winner pick, and I've done some like digging and deep dives on what the date means and what car numbers done this
Oh
or
boy.
that. I didn't do as much of that this year, but I still like when I was writing it down. I was like, I still want to keep some of that tradition alive. I'm gonna find a way every year that I can to kind of come up with a conspiracy theory. If I'm not Charlie Day, picking out conspiracy theories on the whiteboard or the cork board, then there's something wrong. But when I look at my dark horse, I'm looking at the driver of the number 14 AJ Foyt machine, Santino Ferrucci. The last 6 500s have been won from the first 3 rows. This year's 500 is on May 28th. 6 of those races have, the last 5 races run on May 28th have been won from fifth or higher on the grid. So we're looking at someone at the front, which seems obvious. And you might say, Craig, how can a dark horse be fifth or higher in the lineup? Palou obviously isn't a dark horse. We've talked about VK and Rosenquist's struggles on race day. Award and the McLarens have been good all month. And then there's Santino Ferrucci, who's been fast all month, held the pole for a bit on Sunday. He's finished top 10 in every 500 he's competed in. Also, a little added tie-in, a little added, Charlie Day here. Two of AJ Foyt's 4 Indy 500 wins, he came from fourth on the grid. And the guy just has a lot of swagger to him. I mean, his hairdo kind of reminds me of Patrick Mahomes a little bit. I was thinking too. I was like, he was on the scene last year with the filling in the Screaming Sicilian car. He had like the tinted windscreen, which was really cool. And then this year he's got a lot of swagger. I was like, as Tony Kanaan retires, I was like, who's gonna take over as my favorite driver? Because it's kind of weird when you have a favorite driver growing up, and then that driver like stays driving until like you're 30, and then you're like, who do I pick at 30 as my favorite IndyCar driver? It might just be Santino Ferrucci. The guy's got a lot of swagger. He's got a lot of bravado. I think he's going to have a good run. That's why he's my dark horse for the 107th running of the Indianapolis 500.
Yeah, I went with Santino Ferrucci as well. Look, on the track, man, he's a heck of a driver. He's proven it time and time again. Finishing no worse than he had never finished outside of the top 10 at the Indy 500. But off the track, he's so unassuming. Like funny story. Like my buddy Pat and I were walking along pit road one time, and my buddy is a huge Connor Daly fan, and saw Connor, and because Connor earlier that day it rained, my buddy's Connor Daly hat got wet, trying to get Connor Daly to sign it. And Connor said, "Hey, come find me later. Let the hat dry a little bit." Hat's dried. He sees him, and he's like, "Connor, my hat's dry. Can you sign it now?" And he walks like right up next to and is yelling to Connor Daly right next to Santino Ferrucci. And I'm like, "Oh, hey, Santino, great run out there today." Um, he's just very unassuming and probably the tiniest guy in the entire field, if I have to say. But man, can he drive. And the thing is, you put him in any kind of car and he's driving well. I mean, he runs Xfinity series as well on road courses. It's like, okay, we see you, Santino. You just like racing cars. And he comes from an area of the country that's not extremely well known for producing race car drivers. I mean, he's from Connecticut, for goodness sakes. Um, but yeah, I love Santino Ferrucci. I think he's got as great of a shot as anybody to win this race. I mean, I don't even know if you can call him a dark horse. But yeah, I mean, yeah, we both picked the same dark horse. It's hard not to with him. But I guess if I had to look at somebody else, just kind of real quick, I guess I would look at a Connor Daly who didn't qualify well, but has had success has led a lot of laps at IMS here the past few years. So Connor Daly has as good of a shot as anybody as well, I think, in the dark horse category. But still, give me Santino Ferrucci.
Now, looking at who we think is going to win the Indianapolis 500, who's going to win the whole darn thing and be drinking the milk on Sunday afternoon? To sound like
nobody picked chocolate milk.
Yes.
Nobody picked chocolate milk.
No.
And I think this is the first time we haven't had somebody that's lactose intolerant and had to pick orange juice.
Interesting.
I looked at the list, and there was no orange juice this year. There has been in the years past.
Yeah, there has been. And also like sad for chocolate milk, man. Chocolate milk's a good pick.
Okay, off topic, like not off topic, but what milk would you choose?
Honestly, okay, for next year, log that away because that's a good question. I wish I wish you would have thought of that for part of the segment. But I mean, I think I would go chocolate milk because that's I think my favorite of the milks. Especially like it's funny. So, when I was a kid, for like meals and stuff, like my dad would make me, a glass of chocolate milk with like the Hershey's chocolate syrup and the milk. I don't need to explain to you. Y'all know how it's made. And
wait, it's not made from brown cows.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you trying to say here?
And then like after a while, like I was like, hey, can not. I mean, I don't know why, but I started being like, hey, can we also buy like the Dean's chocolate milk as well, because that's what we had at school. And so like, and then like after a while, like I stopped drinking chocolate milk altogether, and then I've really gotten back into, as I've gotten back into liking chocolate milk and drinking it more. I've been like, I do like just the chocolate syrup in the milk, pretty simple stuff. But yeah, I think I would go chocolate milk, and I would make sure like, hey, none of that Dean stuff, none of that store bought stuff. Give me the chocolate syrup, give me the milk, both store bought. I get it, but I think I'd go chocolate milk there.
Yeah, I would go chocolate milk as well, just because when I look at the tradition of the pouring of the milk, like I think back to when Will Power won the race, and it was like the hottest Indy 500 on record. And when I see that, and like how sweaty he was, and just how, I mean, it was miserable that day. It makes me think of Anchorman when he's trapped in the and it's so hot, he's
Milk was
trapped
a
in the
bad
phone booth, and his
choice.
milk was a bad choice. That's all I think about, and I'm like, I mean, all chocolate milk wouldn't be much better, but I think I would have to go chocolate milk as well. If that wasn't an option for me, I'll go good old like fashioned 2%. However, I have heard whole milk. Whole milk gives that good look for the photographs, because it's thicker, a little bit thicker. So when you pour it all over your face and all over your head and everything, it has a better consistency for better photos of you in victory circle.
I,
So based on that, I mean, you want a good iconic photo. So I guess you go whole milk. You don't have to drink it. I think somebody said, "Hey, look, I don't like milk. I don't plan on drinking it, but I will pour it all over myself. I won't drink it." So hey, there we go.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah. I mean, that's yeah. I think chocolate milk is the clear play there. I'm glad, but yeah. I mean, I didn't even know that about the whole milk. So something to keep in mind for sure. For sure, I was like, wait, I don't, like you said, don't want to drink it, but let's look good doing it. Um.
Yeah. Back
So,
on topic.
so as far as the Indy 500 champion, I'm gonna sound like a broken record. Palou is the favorite. There's a lot of reasons to pick him. However, I'm going with a driver who's finished higher and higher with every Indy 500 start. He started 15th in 2020, finished 6th. He started 12th and then finished 4th in 2021. Started 7th and finished 2nd last year. He starts 5th this year, and there's no reason to think he can't keep the trend of improvement going. He's got lots of motivation to get the win after last year. He was so close. McLaren celebrating their 60th birthday with special liveries to 500, so he's got a lot of added motivation to go along with just obviously simply wanting to win the greatest race in the world. Give me Pato O'Ward. Also, we saw a driver having the best month. We see a driver having the best month who had a qualifying. We had a driver who having the best month who also had a record qualifying run miss out on the prize last year. We saw Dixon have this incredible month. He missed out. I'm going to go ahead and zag again this year and go away from Alex Palou just because of that. So give me Pato O'Ward for all the reasons I mentioned earlier, and also what a story. He's 5 Indy 500s removed from being bumped, and then 5 years later he wins the whole darn thing. I'm rooting for Pato O'Ward on Sunday. Give me him to win the greatest spectacle in racing.
Yeah, Pato O'Ward he's a great pick. But I'm going with another Arrow McLaren car, and I'm kind of going with the potential feel good story. You love the good, like the Indy 500. There's a lot of emotion behind it, and this driver just loves Indianapolis, loves the fans, loves the tradition, loves just everything about it, and was probably one of the coolest moments when he won it for the very first time. That driver is Tony Kanaan. Um, Goes right in line with McLaren celebrating their 60th anniversary, all that. Um, but what a way to go out! What a way to go out for your last race as a, as a champion of the Indy 500, winning it for the second time, and get another opportunity to have that big nose put right on the side of the Borg Warner Trophy, and he'll say it himself that biggest nose on the trophy. But yeah, I don't know. I just my yeah, your head tells you Pato O'Ward or Alex Palou easily. It's one of those two. Those two, I mean, from what we've seen from Pilot this month, what we've seen from Award last year, and what he's done so far this month. But something in my gut just says, keep an eye on Tony Kanaan. This is as good of a chance as he's had, I think, since he's won it. And that's tough to say because he raced for Ganassi for so long. And
he raced for Andretti in their heyday.
Yeah, and it's just like I just feels like a Tony Kanaan year. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why.
And I mean, exactly 10 years after he won his first, too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. So there we go down the rabbit hole. But
yeah,
give me Tony Kanaan.
Look, I mean,
and honestly, like I said, just what a way to put an exclamation mark on an outstanding career. To cap it off as a 2-time Indy 500 champion at a place you just love so much for a historic racing wise, maybe not IndyCar wise, but racing wise for such an historic team. What a cool opportunity for Tony Kanaan. So I say he comes home victorious on Sunday.
Hey, I'm a little jealous because that's my favorite driver from IndyCar. So I mean, I'm glad somebody picked him. I wasn't so sure if I wanted to, but yeah, love that feel good story. If he were able to cap off his career with a win at the Indy 500, man, that would be really cool. Well, that does it for this week's edition of the Crash Course Podcast. We previewed the Indy 500. We've given you all the tools you need. Now it's time for you guys to go enjoy the race. Remember, you can like us on Facebook, 3C Media over there. Go follow us on Twitter at 3C Media Sports. If you're not already on the YouTube channel, go over there, hit subscribe, ring the bell. Also, head on over to TikTok and give us some love there as well. And remember, you can listen to us every week on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever podcasts can be heard. You can hear the Crash Course Podcast. You can find me at Crash Course FM on Twitter. B. Scott, where can they find you?
Find me on Twitter at Brandon_Scott87.
We'll be here next week to recap the greatest spectacle in racing. But until then, have a good week, everybody. Enjoy your Memorial Day and enjoy the 107th running of the Indianapolis 500.